Fusio is an open-source API management platform. In this video we show how easy you can use Fusio to create a great API. To start, we create an API using the entity generator, which allows us to generate a complete API based on an entity definition. As type, we create a simple to-do object with an description and done property. On execution, Fusio automatically creates the underlying database and all operations, actions and schemas to create, receive, update and delete this object. We use the database panel to insert some example entries which we can then see later on at the endpoint. Our to-do API is now ready to use. We can also take a look at the example entries from our database. We have just showed how you can create an API based on a database table. As next example, we built an action which proxies an HTTP API endpoint. We can use the action designer to execute this action. As response, we get the GitHub API response. One key feature of Fusio is the possibility to describe the request and response payload of each operation. Through this, Fusio can automatically generate a clean OpenAPI specification and also client SDKs. In this example, we create a schema based on the raw JSON input, but it is also possible to manually design the schema through the UI or use other sources like OpenAPI or JSON schema. Now we create a new operation to make the GitHub action available at an HTTP endpoint. If we visit the endpoint, we see the response of our GitHub proxy action. Fusio provides connections which allow you to connect to external services. This can be, for example, a remote database, a message queue, or also a remote API. In the next example, we access the Airtable API. As action, we use the PHP worker to define our endpoint logic. Fusio supports also different programming languages like Java, JavaScript, and Python. In the action code, we get our Airtable connection and simply return all values from a specific table. On execution, we can see the response from the API call. At last, we create also an operation to access this Airtable data. We have now developed some API endpoints with Fusio. To ensure the quality of your API, Fusio provides a testing feature which allows you to check whether every endpoint is working. In our case, the Airtable endpoint has not outgoing schema, also the GitHub schema does not match the returned JSON structure. If an ID is missing, we need to provide a variable path fragment so that Fusio can call the endpoint. In the end, the testing panel helps you to keep up the quality of your API. We are almost done with our first introduction to Fusio, but there are many more features available which we have not covered yet. The backend of Fusio has 6 main sections: API, development, consumer, analytics, monetization and system. If you want to know more about each panel, you can take a look at our documentation, which has the same structure as the backend navigation. At last, let's take a look at our OpenAPI specification. Our operations have a clean description so that developers can easily work with your API. This was a first introduction to Fusio. We hope that you are also excited about the possibilities of Fusio, and if you like the project, please follow us on GitHub.